let's take a moment to talk about our sponsor.
You're a new DM who wants to jump behind the screen. Maybe you've been volunteered by your gaming group, but aren't quite ready. You've been watching people play games online or on podcasts, and you're thinking to yourself, where do they come up with all that descriptive narrative? There's no way I can do that. Well, don't worry. We've got a solution for you. What if I were to tell you that I can put a team of professional writers alongside you at your desk while you're prepping your game? Sounds pretty good, huh? With Describe, we can do just that. These narratives vividly describe monsters, places, spells, people, you name it. It's there, and there are more than 6,000 of these easy-to-search up, copy, and pastable, beautifully written narratives right at your fingertips. Confidently read these narratives aloud in your campaign and impress noob and veteran gamer alike. And the best thing about it is, the library of narratives is constantly growing, and it's affordable. Describe has graciously provided us with a discount for our listeners. Head on over to describe.com/DMD. That's DSCRYB.com/DMD. Use the code DMD at checkout to try Describe for 2 weeks for free. Links will be in the show notes.
And now, back to the show.
Fairies. They've been a part of our homebrew world for close to 15 years. From the Gutter Fey of Prenojine cities, to the Elflings of the Sandsea, to the Fairies of the Wylderynn. They are a widespread species in Heimurrin, and have always been a playable race. So dust off your wings, students of the Dojo, because we are delving into Dash's people. Our favorite fairy, as portrayed by Wylderynn, from an Acorn's journey, a DMD story, because
it's our homebrew world, Fairies, this week on the Dungeon Master's Dojo.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Master's Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters and players alike. We hope to bring you tips and tricks to elevate your game and develop the art of dungeon mastery. I'm your host, Louis Aponte, and these are your dungeon masters, Scott Labby and Bill Robotile. Let's head to the dojo and see what they have in store for us today. Hey, Scott. Hey, Bill.
Hi, Lou.
hello.
Hello.
You feeling okay, buddy?
It's been a long week.
It's been a long week. You look a little tired.
It's been a lot of recording.
There has been a lot of recording.
Too much recording.
Not enough.
Tail end of our week long.
Tell that to Frank. He's got a lot of editing to do.
He's got a lot of editing to do. Lou is happy he has a secondary editor to assist in his trials and tribulations of trying to make us sound good.
Yeah, because I was starting to cry.
Yeah, we sound terrible.
Fairies.
Hey, did you take the bug zapper down? Because they get caught up in that.
I did.
Oh, shit, I put it back up. Let me go get it. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Zzz. Too late.
That was Dash.
Easy come, easy go, I suppose.
So Fairies, we got them all over the place.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
But what do they look like? Are we using the stylized Tinkerbell kind of fairy or something else?
They look like Wylderynn with wings and a tail. Or with wings. I think Wylderynn has a tail.
Wylderynn might. I don't think the fairy does.
They're tiny fey creatures. They're little people. They stand about 2.5 feet tall, maybe a little bit more. I think Dash is a little on the tall side.
Yeah, he's a towering 2'9".
2'9".
Yeah. Massive.
70
massive
pounds.
fairy proportions. Yeah. He's like a toddler size.
But yeah, some of them look similar to the stylized fairy, and then some of them do not look like the stylized fairy.
The Gutter Fey don't.
The Gutter Fey do not. They do fly, but I always thought they looked a little bit more like the evil gremlins. Maybe not quite that bad, but I mean, just they live in the city. They're city fairies, and they're a little rough and tumble.
They are. They're those are the ones you don't want to mess with. They're from the hood.
Yeah. They got themselves a gang. They're very well socialized. They have a very complex social group, but they're also a bit I don't want to say mischievous because everyone thinks they're playing pranks and everything. They're closed.
Yes.
They're very closed. You can get some information out of them, but it's going to cost you something.
Yeah, nothing's free.
And if you end up on the bad side, you don't end up on the bad side of one.
All of them.
You end up on the bad side of all of them.
Yeah, the Gutter Fey are not to toy with. Never sleep on a Gutter Fey because you could get got.
Yeah.
It's like a swarm of bees.
Yeah, and intelligent bees that are going to be hunting your ass down and let every other one know that, guess what? We don't like him.
Oh, Steve found out.
Yeah, actually he did. He ended up in the bad side.
Yeah, Steve was one of my wizards that we were playing in the world with.
Nevitz the Mage.
Yep.
That's his real name, actually. Steve is his character's name, but in the real world, it's Nevitz the Mage.
Nevitz the Mage.
Now the elflings have wings, but they don't fly with them.
Vestigial.
Yeah, they use them to cool themselves off because they're desert dwelling fairies. They're an offshoot race. They have close alliances with the large insects that inhabit the Sandsea. But now Dash is a little more Tinkerbell than the others.
Yeah. Your forest fairies are a little bit closer to the stylized ideal of what people think a fairy should look like.
They have tails.
And
large insect-like wings that allow them to fly.
Yes.
But sadly not Dash because he's more of a glider than a flyer, but
we'll get into that later.
Yeah, you'll have to listen.
So yeah, I think you can run into a little bit different, something you're used to, something you are not. But now, how does the fairy see the world in general?
They see the world as a massive, sprawling space full of clumsy, lumbering, oaf-like species. Well, the Gutter Fey have almost a symbiotic relationship with their human counterparts. They will inhabit the same building and will have a very good relationship with their human or elf or dwarf neighbors as long as they are treated well. If they're not, then you're going to get got.
Yeah, but let me be me. Let them go about their business. You go about yours. You can be very friendly with them. They can do you favors. You can do them favors. If they like you, they like you.
But if they don't, they don't.
Yeah, it's the opposite sides of those coins. One is very, very bright and shiny, and one is not.
Yeah, there's no shades of gray. It's black and white.
The forest fairies, a little skittish initially because they've heard the stories of all these big races, and more often than not, it's bad for them. So a little bit skittish, but again, if they see you as an ally, they will do for you.
And they live in groves of trees. They'll settle in these trees, and they'll stay there. They will have multi-generational homes in these trees. It's almost like the forest version of high rises. So you could have multiple fairy families living in the same massive tree.
Like you said, for generations too. And they don't travel very far. They maybe go to the next fairy grove, which is just a short while away, and they get everything they need from the forest. But more often than not, you're coming into their world, not the other way around.
There's always a queen, much like bees have.
Yep. For each grove.
Yep. Even the Gutter Fey have a queen, a matriarch, if you will. The Elflings are perhaps the most different fairy in Heimurrin because they burrow. They live in tunnels with their insect companions. They are more insectoid in appearance.
Very much so.
Than your traditional fairy.
History has it, they may have started out looking similar to the other fairies.
Yes, but then there was some intermingling with some other races, such as particularly the gnomes that were trapped in the portion of the Wylderynn that was destroyed by the gnome intervention during the Blight.
We're talking thousands of years, millennia ago. And you're right, there's been an interblending. Consequently, they look a bit different. Some may have wings, some don't.
Yep. Totally disappeared through interbreeding with other species.
Some may have an antenna, some may not.
Some may not.
Different colors.
Yes, many different colors.
Many very vibrant colors, similar to the speckling you get off of, say, a beetle's carapace. There's going to be that pearlescent kind of look sometimes to their skin. Other times it's drab. So it runs the full gambit.
How do you think the world sees them?
Well, it depends on who you're looking at.
Yes.
Because the Gutter Fey are probably looked at a tolerable nuisance.
Yes, or a boon, maybe, if you happen to be a family that has a good relationship with them. They're there. You may not see them very often, but you're aware of their presence. Maybe you leave a saucer of cream out at night or some sweets that you purchased from a local shop just to keep them appeased.
Yeah, the little old lady or the little old man, they've been up there since, of course, they have gone through several generations. Maybe, you don't know. You assume because they're diminutive size, they're probably like cats that fly. And we're going to leave out treats for them here and there. And you might know one or two by name. But the rest of them leave you alone. It's fantastic. But then there's other times where, like I said, they're a pest. The constabulary is always trying to shoo them out of the house, and because there's an issue that came up, and they don't forget very often, and they don't leave things alone.
Yeah, so, and you don't want a Gutter Fey infestation in your home if
they're angry with you.
Yeah, it could be problematic.
So yeah, how the world sees them, it depends on the circumstance. Your Sandsea, your Elflings, that's a little different. People see them as an oddity because
you don't see them often.
You don't see them often. When you do, they're astride these giant insects, most oftenly ants that have been bred for that purpose.
And little bugs can be off-putting, and when you see large dog-sized bugs, that's even more off-putting.
Especially in mass.
Yeah, and they're xenophobic, so you don't often come in contact with an elfling unless the elfling happens to be an adventurer of some type.
Or you get too close to somewhere you're not supposed to be.
Yes.
Then you're going to see them usually in numbers, and they're just going to try to shoo you away.
They may eat you.
And they may eat you. So, they're the oddities. And then there's your nature fairies, which, they say, more often you stumble upon them than they stumble upon you.
And these are the stuff of myth and legend. They're in fairy tales, and oftentimes they're the subject of bedtime stories that various races will tell their children before nighttime. And there are rumors, but they're just rumors. But they are rumors that in some parts of Karavar, the Dwarven Republic, that they are a delicacy.
I think that's horrible. Absolutely horrible. I would never play a character like that.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, how the world sees them depends on
where in the
world you are and who's doing the looking. Yep. So why would a fairy adventure? I mean, they're diminutive. Everything's bigger. Everyone's bigger. Half of the things out there look at you as a snack. Why would you adventure as a fairy?
Curiosity. An overwhelming urge to see what's outside of your specific area you live in. Or maybe there's a need.
Could be.
Maybe that lifestyle of living in a multi-generational tree just isn't for you. Maybe you've been ousted from your community because you're a hothead.
What? Fairies are all happy and go lucky. I don't think I could actually envision an angry fairy.
I met one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Ah, well.
He's in the other room.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Perhaps because it's such a closed community, once every 10, 20, 100 years, they may be sent out, either in a group or individually, to figure out what's going on outside. The queens need to know what's going on outside their borders so they could see whether, okay, status quo, great, everything's fine. Oh, there's a war going on. We might want to watch that. We're not going to get involved. We want to watch out for that. Just be ready for it, just to make sure in case that war comes here, we need to go somewhere safe and be gone before they get here. So it might be out of necessity as well as curiosity that they would be out there adventuring. So there's quite a few reasons why a xenophobic fairy might need to go out there and adventure. That being sent, even if it's not just self-compulsion, it might be, or no, you're being sent. We need to know. how about cultural considerations? The everyday life. I mean, what they eat, what their family might look like. What's important to a fairy?
I think the Gutter Fey, I see our Gutter Fey much in the same way I see wildlife in a city. I watched a squirrel and a seagull fight over a cheeseburger in a McDonald's parking lot. Neither one of them being carnivores. I figure they would have a very omnivorous diet. They would eat whatever's available to them when it becomes available.
I always pictured the Gutter Fey as that troop of monkeys that is around all, the temples around India, that they're worshipped, but they're tolerated, but they'll come up and just take anything you want. And you can't do anything about it because, number one, they outnumber you. They have teeth and they're kind of protected. And the Gutter Fey would be the same way. All right, don't piss them off.
Yeah.
Just smile, nod, and go, okay, it's part of your lunch.
Yeah, you don't want them to throw poo at you.
Yeah, eat the other half of your lunch and be happy that they're happy. So, there's different ways to go about that. But
the Elflings of the Sandsea would probably eat smaller insects and various plant life. They would know where to, what plants to eat to get some water. They would eat, certainly from traders and the whatnot, any fruits or vegetables, but I see them primarily as vegetarians with the exception of their consumption of insects.
Insects, and maybe some of the larger creatures that are hunted on occasion for special occasions or to help fortify the stockpile of food. And again, like I said, most of your plants in the desert, the majority of the plant is living underground searching for water. So I can see them eating a lot of tubers and roots and things like that. So, because that would be accessible to them more so than the buds and the shoots of the plant. Family. What's family going to look like?
It's matriarchal. There's always a female at the
always
head.
A female at the top.
Multi-generational across the board.
Yep.
Where a family is of such a size that it's almost like a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Extended family and intermingling with other like family groups. So the male would once there is a bonding, the male would move over to the family of the female and be assimilated into that like kind of family group.
I could see the care of the young being communal.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so. Where as the adults are out, they're checking the borders, harvesting fruits and berries and nuts, perhaps hunting the massive game of a squirrel or a badger on occasion, then bringing it back. And in the meantime, the aunts, the uncles, the slightly infirm, the elderly would watch over the children and teach them the ways as they go up. And when they finally get to a certain age, they'll go out with the adults and do all the things the adults need to do.
I see, with the exception of the leadership, the fairies would there wouldn't be any like traditional gender roles. There would
no, not at all. It's just whether you're physically fit to do the job, with the exception of the very top. What's important to a fairy?
Well, I would think their family unit and the survival of their family unit would be of top importance because they are multi-generational creatures, so that the family, particularly the experiences of the older fairies, being a living history to the family group, I think venerable fairies would be widely respected.
Oh, yes. They're the repository of the knowledge for the most part. And I would have to think that the continuation of their traditions would be very important to them. I mean, it's multi-generational. Things don't change quickly or often. It's been done this way for a very, very long time. And it's important to them to make sure it's still being done this way because it works.
Yeah. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Change is bad.
Very bad.
Change is bad.
And I could see them embracing that because it was a massive change that split the species into three.
Almost world ending.
Yeah,
but it would have to be that big for them to respond to it.
So they may hold very similar traditions from the old days, with the exception of some slight differences from species to species.
Right, which are probably forced upon them by environment and circumstance. So now we move on. What class would we choose for this race?
I think rogue is a natural.
Yeah, pretty much a given. Diminutive size makes it hard to be seen.
Particularly if you were a Gutter Fey. I think for woodland fairies, the nature fairies, they were a druid, perhaps ranger would be appropriate.
A lot of the spell casting, because it's innate magic. They're usually in an area that is rife with magic. So for them, it's normal and average. They do have some racial abilities that are very similar to spells. So I can see them expanding upon that with certain knowledge. They have a gift for it, and magic comes to them easily. The Elflings are being xenophobes. I can see them a bit warlike.
Yeah, fighters.
Fighter. Maybe the champion would be the Palantir. Rangers, of course. Someone's got to find new food sources, because I think for the most part they're a bit nomadic at times too.
And it's a harsh climate.
It is. So it's easy to run out of resources. So moving about, so you're going to need those Rangers out in front to make sure they can find what they need for the next week, month, year, whatever the cycle may be. Well, what classes do you think would not fit? We didn't put that in there, but
no, I think warlock. Warlock, a cleric might be a stretch, but I can see that being appropriate as well. But
on
really,
a more limited basis, someone has to make everyone better,
right?
Eventually, so a cleric would be in there, but I think it would be one of those highly respected positions and not necessarily something that everyone's going to do. There'd be
like one per grove,
with a maybe a trainee to take over when this one passes on, then the next one. And as soon as one passes on, they take on a trainee.
And almost always a female.
Oh, yes.
Because that would be, you would be the one passing on that faith to the others.
They may even be, depending on, with the Elflings, that might actually be the leader.
Yes.
If it wasn't the leader, it would be the close confidant thereof.
An advisor, if you will.
Yeah, the advisor. So, yeah, that I think that pretty well does a good job of wrapping up our fairy for the bit.
And I will say, like, artificers would probably not work, with the exception of maybe the alchemist.
The alchemist, could do natural compounds, maybe. But I don't see the artificer being even though the Elflings are so close to the gnomes and they trade with them a lot, I still don't see that, because the resources by itself might make it difficult to play out that class. There you go, the fairies.
And that's our homebrew world, fairies. We'll see you next time in the dojo. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.